Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Chasing Psychological Safety. This week, we're talking about the fact that psychological safety is just never done. And it's something we've said to you before, something we keep repeating. The human work is super important. And once you start it, you can't walk away from it. Unfortunately, it's just not one of those things that you can tick box and put aside as a sorted topic. It's not really shocking. There's not very many topics that are about humans, which are once and done. And that is part, in our opinion, of the human that we've accumulated, is this conviction that we could have dealt with the topic and then left it alone, as if that would have magically continued to maintain itself in any which way if we had done good things. So the number one lesson that we're discussing today is that comes from Google's recent experience. We all are aware that Google are essentially the front runners when it comes to psychological safety in the business and technology world. If it hadn't been for their Project Aristotle, we wouldn't be where we are today. But equally, the way that has been maintained over the years is being questioned today, because we've had reports of at least one this very important team that's meant to actually, it's at the heart of the Google Hub, because they're in charge of making sure Google still exists and keeps being up and part of our lives. And they were reporting the fact that their cultural norms, their behaviors were slipping, and they were seeing essentially a climate of less psychological safety and of issues in the team. So I'm not going to go into the details as to what they were saying. You can read those articles online. But what we did want to outline is the fact that what Google shows is not that their efforts were in vain, but on the contrary, it's a really good example as to how, even if you do hit bumps in the road, that's going to be super important that you just keep carrying on.
And it's interesting, isn't it, that when something happens, when there is a bump in the road for one of the big names in something like psychological safety, you know, the organization as Google is, that's been held up as the paragon of virtue, the front runner, the leader in psychological safety, that when we hear the inside story, you know, we get the case study about where it's faltered, it would be very easy and automatic to think, oh, well, it doesn't work after all. They're only human like the rest of us. And actually, you know, all those efforts they put into psychological safety were in vain. We can give up on our initiatives too. In fact, it's the exact opposite. So if we are able to be ourselves self-aware enough, we can look at them and say, actually, here's an organization that really committed and is hugely successful as a result of focusing on psychological safety in its teams, as a result of giving emotional awareness and agility to its teams, such that they can name when it goes wrong. So the fact that they are aware enough to want to make it work when the psychological safety falters, to understand that the world is sufficiently a better place when they work on psychological safety, that they have to call out when it falters and falls off the cliff, that the world was a better place when they had psychological safety and their work was better and they were more performant when they had psychological safety. And they've put it out there in the public arena for us all to see that and to galvanize the organization internally into working on it again. It shows us just how important psychological safety has become to the culture at the very core of Google and of its success. So instead of looking, you know, with envy and using our negativity bias to say, oh, well, it didn't work for them anyway, we should try and be self-aware enough to look at them with admiration and say, actually, that's how it really works. Psychological safety is something we have to work on continuously. And when it falters, we need to call that out and redouble our efforts to make that team happy and highly performant again.
Precisely. We can't use this as yet another excuse to not do the human work. On the contrary, this is a good example as to what happens when you do it correctly. And the chances are that, yes, they've had a moment which is that they're not afraid to publicly display for our learnings. But that moment is going to be but a blip on their journey. And when they get back on track, where they get to is going to be miles away from people that are just not willing to put in the work. So take Google's moment as a warning that there's a lot of work to be done, and the more you delay it, the further back you are. But also kind of start taking some lessons, like dissect it, figure out what was happening there. There's an element of bad management that I'm sure we can all relate to. Unfortunately, there's a lot of ease to relate when it comes to bad management. We all can kind of cast our minds back to having had those moments with all types of negative connotations to the culture where quote unquote management / leadership wasn't taking us where we should have been. So there's some moments of that in it. There's also a lot of examples of Googlers being able to express precisely how they feel and to correctly identify the behaviors within the team. That takes a lot of emotional intelligence, and it takes a lot of practice of human work for them to have arrived there. And if you look at the latest in the last couple of days, that we have had already the organization reacting to this in ways that are going to be very healthy going forward. So it's an example as to what happens when you're open, honest, and willing to continue the human work and to double down on your efforts. Take a page from their book, come talk to us. There's software to help you make this work slightly easier, but no one's going to be doing it for you. So best of luck. And let's chat and try and get there faster. Have a lovely week, and we'll talk to you next week.
Thanks. Bye.